welcome everybody. Welcome back to the show. Today is a fun one for me because this company, we have a special guest. And this company that's here today with us, I've been watching for well over a decade, for a long time. And not just watching, but I've worked with this company. I knew them as Jemez back in, I remember first seeing the technology. It would have been around 2012, 2013 is when I was first exposed to Jemez, which is what it was called back then. And we'll explain why. But what grabbed me then was the detection range that they offer as far as analytics are concerned. Detection is always like it's the holy grail that we try to find is reliable detection at range. And that's where the rubber meets the road. Like it becomes a big challenge to reliably detect people, vehicles, outside of like what I see now in a lot of the market is 20, 30, 40 feet is like kind of the standard. And when you ask manufacturers, whether it's a camera manufacturer that has an onboard analytic that they offer, or if it's third-party analytic companies, when you ask them detection range, it's you usually get like a variety of answers. Nobody really knows, and there's a lot of variables, of course. But Jemez, again, really caught my eye years and years and years ago because of that detection range. And I remember it would put a reticle, which I'm prior military, so I thought it was really cool that it would put a reticle on the person out, a mile, even 2 miles away with a thermal camera, put a reticle, and then the PTZ, we could sync the pan tilt zoom camera to now track and follow them and zoom in. And the reticle I loved. And I was, we'll let you, Tanner, dive in with about like how the technology was developed out of Los Alamos Labs and for military use, government defense use, things like that. But anyways, so I'm excited to dig into this. Let's go ahead and do an intro. We'll have Tanner, we'll let you start as our guest, introduce yourself. And I think everybody already knows Scott. Do we want to do introductions?
Tanner, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Tanner.
Perfect. So my name is Tanner LaRocque, and I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing at Evolon Technology. I'm based in Austin, Texas. I've been at Evolon for the last 3 years, watching the evolution into the proactive video monitoring space, and I have been in the industry for about a decade at this point, primarily on the video surveillance side. So as we dig in today into the proactive aspect, it's been fun to watch it go from record on motion to react on motion.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks again for being here and joining us. I'm super excited about this episode that we're going to do. Anytime we talk analytics, it's really fun. But this specific analytic, again, I've had years watching it develop or evolve. At like the kind of the tagline on Evolon. But interesting fact, Jemez, which was the former name, came from the Jemez mountain range, correct?
Mm-hmm. That is correct.
Yeah, so that's a fun little tidbit there where that came from. But then the name changed how many years ago to Evolon?
So the name Jemez comes from the mountain range where the initial scientists in Los Alamos that were working on long-range object-based detection, when they spun out of the lab, they named the company based on the mountain range that they had spent so many years, in there at the labs. And in 2020, as computer vision was becoming much more popular, much more capable, we rebranded to Evolon. So we've been Evolon now for the last 6 years, and that shifted the focus not just from detection, but verification, which brought us into a completely new identity and a whole new world of solutions.
There we go.
Right from the conception of the company, you were dealing with military standards coming out of Los Alamos. And so that already set a high bar as far as the technology developed right then and there. To me, that seems like that was your company's base.
Yeah.
And that's why, because I see superior AI coming out of this company, and I've been very impressed with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've been fortunate enough to meet a lot of the early folks that came out of the Los Alamos Labs back when I worked with them and was first exposed to the tech, and they were the traditional super genius, super smart, big pocket protector with a lot of pens and super fun guys to work with back then, and here we are today. So as we kick off, Tanner, tell us a little bit about your background, what you do at Evolon, And I know you're fairly newly married.
I am.
So congrats again on that.
Thank you.
But yeah, it'd be nice to just know a little bit more about you, your background, and then what you do at Evolon today.
Sure. So I mentioned, my background started at a company called Raspberry. And so when I left college and joined the security industry, I was at the time, this is about 2017, 2018, cybersecurity had its heyday in the SaaS marketplace, and it was sort of bleeding into physical security. And so at the time, what we were doing is automating cybersecurity best practices for NVRs and servers so that security integrators didn't have to become cybersecurity experts to meet the changing demands that end users had. Mm-hmm. So that brought me into the video surveillance world. I did a lot of work with Milestone and Genetec and systems like Axis and Hanwha. And so we were selling massive server racks with multi-million-dollar server arrays recording at high frame rates 24/7 so that we could go back in time and run incident reporting, or at the time in 2018, 2019, your best use case of analytics was in a forensics capacity, right? Yep. Let's go back and look at the footage and identify what from that we can take out and adjust in the security posture for the business.
And back then, but back then it was usually you're just looking at motion. So you're going back and you're searching a timeline. Again, there's so many video management systems out there, but you're looking at motion. Today, most people still are doing that. They're going back and looking at, like, you kind of have an idea. You show up to work and you see you had a break-in or theft, whatever. Sometimes you find out days later, weeks, but usually you have an idea like when it would have happened. But you're looking at motion, right? Mm-hmm. And that's traditionally how our stuff works. But that to your point though, that's kind of unfortunately it's an antiquated way of watching video, which is kind of sad. Yeah,
no, it's true. And we would always establish a record on motion inside of the video management software, the VMS. And then when you had the motion event from the camera, that's what initiated your frames per second and your recording standards. And so, fast forward, Raspberry was acquired by Acre Security. So I spent a little bit of time in the access control and visitor management space, working in their marketing and go-to-market teams. And then the founder from Raspberry became the CEO of Evolon. His name is Tom Galvin. And I had enjoyed working under his leadership at Raspberry. He's really great at architecting the vision and then making that become a reality in product, which from a marketing and a sales perspective is always someone that you want to work underneath, right? And at the time when that transition was happening, this is 2023, and so Evolon had 3 years of developing their computer vision models. And so at this point, the company was attractive not only from the technology standpoint, right? You have the legacy of Jemez matched with this powerful computer vision model of verification, but there was something a little more exciting in the marketplace happening, right? I was sitting at Acre, and you're looking at the video surveillance side of the world, and that record on motion was shifting to a respond or react on motion. And so whether that was language at the end user table, deciding, hey, we're very reactive. How do we become proactive, right? Proactive was a vocabulary term that was becoming a commonplace in the market. And so fast forward, right, join the team at Evolon. What I do is I work through the go-to-market, so both marketing and sales, working with our channel partners, working with our end users, and absorbing as much feedback that we can get in the field, pulling that back into our positioning as well as the product roadmap with the product development team. So that's a little bit of a background on me and where my focus is here at Evolon now.
Yep, and you're out of Texas?
I'm out of Texas. Yeah, born and raised. Austin, Texas is my home. So if anyone listening ever finds themselves in the great state of Texas or in Austin,
a nice town.
Happy to take you to grab some food.
Good music and good food.
Yeah, good comedy. Great scene.
6th Street?
It's 6th Street.
That's where all the fun is.
There's fun everywhere.
Yeah. Austin's of course, it's a little hot and humid in the summer, but that's all right. It cools off at night.
Yeah, it's nice and hot here this week, so getting
no
a taste of it.
And we have all the forest fires going on, so the air's pretty smoky. But that's summer. It'll be fall and winter before we know it, and then you have to come back out and
we'll
ski.
Be back. Absolutely.
Go hit the slopes. Okay, well, so how much of the original Jemez DNA is still in Evolon today?
So when you look at Evolon from a tech stack perspective, and this goes for every proactive video monitoring solution in the marketplace, right? There's really 3 core activities that have to take place for us to be successful. There's detection, verification, and response. And so those 3 components can either be separate pieces of technology, or in Evolon's case, they can be one tech stack. Now, the original Jemez technology lies in the step 1, right? The detection. So before we can ever have a monitoring operator respond to an event, and before it's even been validated, we have to identify that something is present on site, right? That's our detection level. And at the most basic, you have motion detection, which is what a lot of analytics onboard cameras start with, right? I have a triggered event, which then the analytics verify the object. And so what Jemez was focused on was not necessarily motion, but object detection. So looking for pixels in motion that identify a specific object in the scene rather than basic motion. And that's where, when you look at our layer 1, the edge component, Jemez is still, bright and thriving in that space, because not only are we extending the detection range of objects, but because you're looking for that object's sort of behavior, right, the actual movement of the object, that's where you're getting a lot of, I would call it a level 1 filter as well, right? So we're not tripping on a tree blowing in the wind, not that kind of motion. Bugs by the lens, not that kind of motion, or rain or sleet or snow. And so there's a lot of noise that's created at the first level, which is detection, if you're using a basic motion-based trigger. And so that's where Jemez lives today. It has been fun watching the Evolon team fully integrate that level of detection into the step 2, which is classification. And so, and I'll wait till we get into computer vision, but you can imagine that legacy technology is now fully integrated and sort of coordinating information in real time, both at the edge and with the cloud. So you end up with this sort of orchestrated detection meets verification layer, which is really cool to see. Yeah.
So this is a great segue. So back years ago when I first was introduced, I was super impressed with it. I used to go around with them with thermal and a PTZ, and do long-range detect, like 2 pixels per foot. Like I was detecting a human, and then putting the pan-tilt zoom camera on target as that person's walking around. Vehicles even, like easier to detect because it's bigger. But to your point, that's pixel-based motion detection. It just was dialed in for very low pixel count so it allowed you to detect at a very, very long range, which was super impressive at the time. So fast forward, I deployed it for a customer. Again, this would have been back in like 2013, 2014. I first initially deployed thermal, non-cooled, Axis thermal cameras for a client that was having a lot of challenges around their property, huge warehouse area, people coming in, popping bay doors, coming in and like stealing big screen TVs by the hundreds. It's a big distribution warehouse and whatever else they could snag. And Big is in Las Vegas, Nevada, so law enforcement's too busy to respond to that kind of stuff. So we did Perimeter Defender, which was an Axis product, and it worked pretty good, except for like we were still triggering on like cats, like animals coming through the scene, or trash blowing through the wind, because you get that perpendicular, that's where it's good at triggering, but you get that cat or piece of big garbage blowing through in the high winds that Vegas has. So I did put in Jemez, and also long range detection, like to detect at a further range with a lower cost thermal camera. Jemez was good at that, so we put Jemez in, but we still had false positives on cats. Cats were constantly a nuisance for us. So with that's where Evolon, kind of to break this down or simplify it, this is where now advancing to where we are today, to your point, where we got the pixel detection, but now you guys are using the ability you're leveraging AI to now say, okay, the object based, that is a cat, not a human, so we don't need to alarm or trigger an event off that. That's noise. That's a nuisance alarm, and you guys filter that out. Am I right in how I'm kind of laying all this out?
Yeah, exactly. So when you get past level 1, we've detected an event, right? The the key in verification is you want accuracy and you want speed. Because the slower the process of validation, the longer you put off having an operator respond to it. So speed is important, but at the end of the day, accuracy is important as well, right? We don't want false positives. We don't want a missed event going through. And we also don't want a true event being held up in a process. So when it comes to accuracy, when Evolon set out to build a computer vision model that would work for AI verification, we stuck to the specific segment of the market that we are focused on, right? Which is perimeter intrusion detection, after hours security of physical assets or commercial properties. And so when you look at how companies in the market have developed computer vision, there's all kinds of application. You see weapons detection, you see object left behind, there's marketing and operational insights that you can grab from analytics and computer vision these days. And so we really fine-tuned our use case of computer vision for two things. We wanted to identify the people in vehicles, right? So that's where we spend all of our training focus, right? I need to know when that object in a very far distance is a human being, right? I need to know when that object moving in the scene is a vehicle, especially in our use case. And then the second is accuracy. So when you look at the AI training, right, our models have only been exposed to real-world surveillance applications. So while Jemez might give us the detection, right, the underlying technology, where the Evolon Edge, which is the name for that, when Evolon Edge provides us with a detection, it's going to be at a much further distance than a standard computer vision model would be able to then do a classification of a person or vehicle. And so we spent a lot of time over the last 6 years fine-tuning with real data what a human looks like at 400 feet away, 500 feet away, at night with bad lighting or in a rainstorm.
Tanner, you just threw out some big numbers. And that's why it's so powerful to have this conversation, because you just said 400, 500 feet away to detect a person. That might not seem like a big deal, but what if it's kind of dark or really dark? And you have infrared illumination. Obviously, you need the camera needs light to see. So whether you introduce IR or you add a little, small little spotlight or something to add just a little bit of ambient light, but these are crazy far distances for us. And we're not talking a thermal camera here. We're talking an RGB camera, correct?
That's
you guys
correct.
can detect at that range.
That is correct.
That's where Evolon is massively important for good detection in what should be a sterile environment, and where you guys are a lot different. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to highlight that because that is the appeal. That is something you guys offer that is really difficult. In fact, almost impossible to find. I haven't been able to find a better, more accurate detection analytic at those ranges in the industry.
Well, that's you got a word for what we're talking about here. It's the refinement of the AI that eliminates the false positives, because that's why camera systems a lot of times just end up being a what happened kind of thing, because you're drinking out of a fire hose when you've got detection and it's not dialed in. We just saw a demo on the software, blew me away. Confidence settings, thresholds. Explain that to them, because I was very impressed with how you have the ability to adjust your confidence levels.
Yeah, so I think what might help with the audience is let's separate two different things that happen simultaneously. One is training of the underlying model, right? And so when Evolon is applying our computer vision to identify the object, that is the training that we do to improve the accuracy of that model's performance. Now, what we give to the service provider in the industry is the ability to fine-tune the confidence percentage thresholds that allow an event to go through that verification pipeline and then service an alarm, either to the end user or to a monitoring operations center. And so the reason that's really important is that an AI engine, a computer vision model, is really a guessing tool, right? It looks at the image and it has a sense of the scene, and it says, what is that object, right? Is it a dog? Is it a human? Is it a car? And when I look at that object and I say, that's a human, how confident am I in my guess that that object matches a human? So every computer vision model will output a confidence threshold. And in some cases, you've probably seen the videos where you have the bounding box around the human and it's got a little number, 78.5%, right? So that's the AI telling you that's how confident I am in this scene. So one of the challenges that we tried to solve, right, in the monitoring use case is that if you were to take a out-of-the-box one-size-fits-all, so I'm going to, as the manufacturer, I'm going to set my confidence threshold to X. Well, every scene is different, right? You have different lighting, different camera angles, different cameras, different scenes that the camera is looking at. And so the camera and the AI confidence threshold have to be fine-tuned for us to get to the best performance that we can. So, Scott, to your point, what we have sort of opened up to the service provider is that once I establish my camera, I can separate the confidence threshold for both a person and a vehicle. And then we took it a step further and we enabled the confidence threshold for the motion of that object. So I'll give you an example. Out of the box, let's say that 75% is a really good threshold. So if the AI looks at that object and says, I'm 80% confident that that's a human being, that alarm will then make it to the operator. If the AI looks at that object and says, I'm 70% confident, it would be filtered out, right? Because 75% becomes our threshold. So the second step is the motion percentage. So once we've validated, okay, 80% confident, that's a human alarm. Now my question is that object actually in motion? And we see in monitoring a lot of use cases, parking lots, fleet yards, warehouses with trucks, construction sites with equipment. You've got a scene where you have motion. Maybe it was caused by rain, lightning, a lighting change from a driving headlight, fleeting by. That creates the motion trigger. Then you have the AI, and its job is to say, is there a car here? Yes, there's a car. This is a car lot, right? But is that car in motion? And so then we've established a secondary threshold that your team can establish. Okay, in most cases, let's say 30% or greater is a good threshold to set. So I know it's a car. Am I at least 30% confident that that object has velocity in this scene, that it is truly moving? If so, I now have almost two verified events. I have a vehicle event, I have a motion event, now I have an alarm that needs a response. And so by separating all of those out, and this is what we were talking about earlier with the team, what's really cool is we get deployed into a site, and it does not take long to get a lot of data. And when we look at that data, we can identify at a per camera basis how that camera and the environment is leading to the AI's performance. And we might find that we need to dial some cameras back. We might find that we can dial some cameras up. Or we might find that it's a very noisy scene and we need to apply things like a better motion confidence percentage or maybe even some advanced analytics on the back end. So having the ability to fine-tune it is so critical because what it allows you to do is go from a good result to a great result.
Yeah.
And you can replicate that camera by camera, site by site, customer by customer.
Now, who, just for the audience, who's normally making these adjustments? Is it the customer or the integrator or the provider?
Yeah, so we, the team at Evolon, work alongside our system integrator, our service provider partners. It's a decision that we make together, right? As we were talking earlier, when you make these changes to the system and you're deciding what is allowed through the filter and what's not. We don't want to miss events, but we also don't want too many false events for the operator. So we'll start at a baseline, and then the team at Evolon will work with the team at Backstreet. We'll take a look at the data after week 1, after week 30, or after day 30, right? And in many cases, when you get to about 30 days of data, you can run that through a regression analysis, and you're going to get a statistically significant result that says, on average, these are the confidence percentages that are coming through. And so, of course, the more time that we spend on site, the better the data gets in terms of making an informed decision. And so Evolon's team is there to work with Backstreet. And then at the end of the day, we all work together with the customer to explain, hey, these are the adjustments we're going to make to the system based on the performance that we're seeing so that everyone is well informed of the changes that are being made to the AI's performance on the back end.
Right? Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the AI's performance is what's outputting the speed and the effectiveness of the monitoring solution.
Yeah. So just to for the general audience, we use the term a lot in the security industry, VMS. So how the security industry works, we always try to, at least in my opinion, a lot of people try to compartmentalize. Like, okay, here's my VMS. Got to have a VMS, video management software, right, that manages my cameras and all the recordings. Puts it in a timeline. I can go in and run a search. I can scrub. I can put in dates. I can save the clip of video. Some VMSs have the ability to do, like, I'm looking for a person, and it's using either cloud-based analytics or GPU-based. Usually you have to pay in some form or fashion. The more advanced the analytics packages, the more money you're paying. A lot of new cameras now have object-based analytics that run on the edge. But again, these all are typically short range. They, like, the range for them to know person or vehicle, is 100 feet. I've seen maybe 200 feet depending on the camera and resolution and whatnot, but never anywhere near. Evolon's typically double the detection range. But so VMS, a hardware manufacturer, or central station, what are you guys?
Yeah, so we're really the sort of the connective tissue that takes whatever hardware or video management software or security technologies on site, and we connect that existing hardware into a monitoring security operations center. We sort of provide that technology pipeline in terms of using what's on site to generate the results that we need for after-hours security. And so by bridging that gap, the exciting thing, if you look at Evolon in 2026, is we can support really any camera system, regardless of the brand, regardless of the megapixel quality. And so
hardware and software, so VMS doesn't matter, agnostic, camera brand doesn't matter, agnostic.
Correct. Yeah, we're agnostic to the intrusion brand, the video surveillance brand, and the software that they're using on site. Now, with certain partners like Axis and Hanwha, we do have direct onboard integrations because those hardware platforms allow for third-party applications to be written to their hardware, where we can eliminate additional hardware required on site.
And that's because they have powerful processors, typically more powerful than most. And they have pretty good, nice, clean APIs. Like Vapix is a really nice video API by Axis, really easy for you guys to write to run on the edge. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Are you guys looking at writing to the edge of any other manufacturers that you can talk about right now? Road mapping anybody else?
Yeah. So we always talk, right, and we've talked about this earlier today, right? The exciting thing for me on the marketing side, right, when you look at marketing a company, the best way to market a company is to have a great product. And the best products are the ones that are constantly improving and changing. And so what has been exciting for me in the 3 years I've been here is the development team works on agile sprints that are all tied to our partners' project requirements, right? So when we engage with a large customer that has a specific need, that need immediately makes its way into the roadmap, and we roll that feature, that service out. And so there's so much when you look at the product that we have today that's been built and informed by an end user who says, I need this outcome and this is what I have today. How can you get me there? And then we'll go and build that. So I think the right answer would be if there's a platform that enables third-party integration, by all means, right, our goal is to support what the end user has on site and make it work, even better than it is today. So by all means, yes.
And true to form, I mean, there's several initiatives that we're working on together to continually enhance. And what we come from the street level, from our end user base, like what the feedback that we're getting and what we see and what we're working with as an integrator, like trying to pull it all together and offer a cohesive system. I mean, there's a few things that we've seen that we've come to you guys with that we've asked for, and you guys have been great. We have a pretty big roadmap that we're excited about that I know you guys are working on. We'll probably touch on some of those things.
That's one thing, I've been doing this 36 years, and we've dealt with all kinds of vendors and providers, and I am just completely impressed with the way that you guys listen to the street, because you see the applications and the challenges at the street level. We're not sitting here dealing with an antiseptic engineer that in his mind this is what needs to be done. You guys actually listen, and at the speed that you develop has been impressive. And Rob, why don't you back up and tell them specifically the challenges that we had with the surveillance systems. That's why we initially, teamed up with you, is because we had very challenging needs, while other providers had some version of it, but it wasn't efficient.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you said that, Scott, because let me back up a little bit. Again, I kind of set the table a little about, I've known Jemez. I even did pro bono consulting with Evolon when it was changing names with a lot of the leadership to figure out like what's the market, what's the industry looking for. This was many years ago, but I sat down with a lot of the leadership team and a lot of the investors to kind of help direct the product, because I loved what it was, what Jemez was. Again, detection at distance, reliable detection. Cool, like that's hard to find. Like I couldn't, and at the price point that you guys had at the time. So what I sought out to do here at Backstreet, because we're very strong in the mobile surveillance, and why mobile is so powerful is its quick deployability. So if you're an end user and you're having crime, and these are the types of clients that we deal with every day, new and existing clients, like we are here to help support. But these are the type of concerns or issues that we see out in the industry are break-ins, or it's just coming onto a construction site. It's typically remote, like very remote areas where the lighting's poor, vast, big areas, where it's like, how are we going to cover this with video? Do I do radar? But it's big areas, so radar can get very expensive, but then you still don't see, when there's an incursion potentially, but then you still need video to see what happened. Where did they come from? Like, what did they do? Who was it? But then also you need it to be low power draw. I can't be putting big beefy GPUs in a mobile platform because I'm running on the sun and I'm running on batteries when there is no sun. And winters can be long. These go all over the place. So it has to be very reliable and very low power draw. And so I started and I've been doing this for years. It wasn't like, I woke up one day and I'm like, I want to figure this out. Like I've been working on this and evaluating and deploying systems. I'm very passionate about it. So I'm always looking for the best of breed. How can I solve these problems the best way possible? And I was looking at a lot of cloud-based management software platforms, because VSaaS, we call it, video software as a service. And I was exploring them with Scott. We're like looking at all these different things. Detection at distance is always how, that's like a litmus test. And they show you, like there's so many of them out there that show you, I'll call Verkada out, for example, like as a brand, like they will show you, look how amazing our analytics are. I can come in here and run a search on a person, a color of clothing, and it's really sexy and it looks really cool. And the list is very lengthy of VSaaS companies that are new entrants into the market that have a very nice, clean, sexy interface. It's really fun to play with their software. It's cool. But for what we're trying to do in a lot of cases is it's very low light scenarios, and I'm trying to catch somebody that's coming in 500 feet away. They're crossing in, they're low crawling in behind a barrier or a little hill, because they're looking for bad actors. They're smart enough to know what the asset is they're looking to get, and they do a risk analysis in their own mind, right? Some of them do it very in-depth, some of them do it quick, but no matter what, they do a risk analysis. Risk versus reward. Okay, my risk is very minimal and the reward is pretty large, so they sneak in. And I have to be able to detect them not at 30 feet away from the freaking camera. And that's what I see all the time. It's like, what's your detection range? Like the demo video, or when you run a pilot, because VSaaS is easy to test. You spin it up, it's cloud managed, right? It's easy. But I'm looking at, like, you've got to be 50, 60 feet or less away from that camera to get the object recognition. In a lot of cases, even motion-based detection. Motion, again, pixel-based, I can detect motion at a further range, but now I'm getting high false positives, extremely high. And that's noise. And so now you have a nuisance and it's useless. Like, I got so many alarms and events to look through. So to Scott's point, as I'm looking through all these, the sexy interface and the cost of a license. Like that's a big one. They always try to sell you on the cost. Like, well, we're only, $50 a month or $50 a year for a license per camera for our analytics package and this and that and the other. A lot of them try to charge based on bitrate or bandwidth, which we're going to dive in because that's a whole nother fun topic that you guys excel at, which is why we partnered with Evolon. So I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'm going to try to stay on analytics,
Yeah.
but you got your detection range, because nothing else really matters. If I can't detect somebody far away, now I have to deploy more cameras. So the cost of a channel license or how sexy and pretty your video management platform is, and most of them are either agnostic to cameras, so I can go find better cameras that can detect at better range with their edge analytics. But that can be cumbersome because what about the client that already has cameras? What about all of the MSUs, the mobile surveillance units that we already have out in the field? Like Scott and I aren't going to go back. I mean, we can't run a business to have to go back to customers and say, hey, we need to change all your cameras out now. So, you have to have a good migration path. You have to be able to work with what they have today and also be open to work with best-in-class technology as it comes out. We love that you guys were open, but again, just the detection range that you guys offered, nothing else really mattered after we saw that detection range and the reliability of it, because we're actually solving problems now.
Yeah, one of the big things, just from real life experiences, is these mobile platforms, they might work great in one location but not another, and a lot of the competitors, we're talking true 100% cloud, and we're like, we already know the bottleneck of the bandwidth going up and the reliability of that. So you're talking about streaming all the raw data up there to process it. What really got me excited was you guys are on the edge. They've got a good portion of the analytics and the AI on the edge, as well as recording and everything else. So we're only transmitting up what AI has already filtered out. And I thought, you know what? That's going to make these trailers, no matter where they're deployed, a lot more reliable than putting that huge workload up to the cloud with them.
Yeah, because our mobile units can go anywhere. And in some areas we have good 5G, good, awesome speeds. That's great. But what happens too when you're using a ton of data on those high speeds, depending on the provider, on a lot of clients we work with, they're using somebody else's service and they start to try to nickel and dime them on data speeds. We don't do that. To our customers, unlimited means unlimited. It means it's not throttled and you get high speeds unlimited at a set, very competitive rate. So we needed something that was really friendly, no matter where we push our units out to or ship them out to, that was really efficient on the network, whether it's Starlink. People think, Starlink has good speeds, but there's different packages based on data. Starlink's not unlimited like a lot of people think. You have to pay, you're using 500 gigs.
I've seen $8,000 Starlink bills.
Yes.
So you got to know what you're doing.
You do.
Yeah.
And
they'll run away with it.
And that's where Evolon is really slick, because it's edge compute. The compute GPU is on the edge, whether it's on the camera or your bridge, which we'll talk a little bit about, because that allows us, we don't care what the camera is. You guys have a little teeny micro GPU box, and we can do 16 streams on that. And I don't really have to worry what the camera is. So I can take over legacy, trailers or even build, on-prem on building cameras. But you're right, Scott, the bandwidth was super impressive. It's also impressive because when you're event driven, right? So you're detecting an event, you're being proactive. You have to be really efficient on low bandwidth cell networks to be able to feed that event to a central station or an end user if they're monitoring it themselves, right? Because you guys do both. We have pro monitoring, which we offer, but then there's monitor it yourself option as well. But either way, detect the event intruder and feed that push notification really fast, and then have it visible, the clip of what happened, and then live view really fast on very low bandwidth connection. You guys excelled at that. And what Scott was saying, most of them that we tested, you start to get in the weeds on, how much bandwidth you're using. That's how we charge the customer. From the VMS or the analytic detection platform, that's how they go to market. that's really difficult. It's kind of like cellular service that we see where you don't know what your bill is going to be from one day to the next. And that is not a good way, in our opinion, to do business with customers.
Yeah, I totally agreed. And I think one thing I'm huge on is unlimited, right? You're talking about the event-based sort of usage on bandwidth, right? Mm-hmm. One of if I rewind the clock a little bit, right, as Evolon was going into the computer vision side, so the video verification layer, that step 2, it's interesting when you look at the market how many of those platforms are usage-based, right? Mm-hmm. Much like a lot of our AI platforms are token-based. The more I use it, the more I pay. And so the reason a lot of times is because every event is being sent to the cloud for a cloud filter to then filter out. And so they have such a high volume of events that are hitting their platform that it can't be unlimited, because they may charge an unlimited in their AWS or their Google Cloud. That bill is going to exceed what their revenue is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so even from a business model perspective, the fact that we can do so much heavy lifting on that bridge or right on the camera allows us only to use the cloud as the necessary vehicle for secondary validation before going to the central station, which is where we get into a world where Evolon is not usage based, right? We don't have event limits or overage charges on analytics or AI, and I think that's a testament to what you're talking about, being able to do at edge and then hand off to the cloud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a big factor for me. The detection was impressive. In fact, we have real-world experiences. Our first deployment was a huge success. Detection within 24 hours after deploying. Yeah,
it was. I always say within, because now we have a lot out there that are monitored and monitor yourself. Every one of our mobile platforms include monitor it yourself if you have the cell data plan. And it's not an additional price, which is, I think, a pretty cool way to do business.
Yeah.
And then if you do the pro monitoring, which means it goes to the central station, then there is a cost per stream. But man, what we've seen is typically within 24 hours is what we've seen a lot lately. As soon as that gets out, because there's a little bit of a burn-in phase, right? We'll have you kind of elaborate on that if you don't mind. But it's about a week, I always like to say, within the first week of the MSU being deployed. And again, it doesn't even have to be an MSU. It could be cameras on the building. You already have cameras. We can use those. We may determine that we should maybe upgrade a couple of cameras for a better shot or a better view or better reliability, better low light capability, what have you. And that's what we're here collectively as a team to do. But we can tie into virtually anything. But usually a week or less, that's when we see the shenanigans, mm-hmm. and we're nailing them, we're catching them. And these were the first pilot that we did when we first tested. I was blown away because it was a really poorly lit. There was no ambient lighting, so we were in black and white cut filter IR, mm-hmm.
Which
great. That's why the cameras have this capability, so we can see. We roll these out. We don't know always what the lighting is going to be, and we can adapt. The camera has the ability to adapt. But this was, we were pushing that 500-foot limit, and this bad actor didn't just walk into the scene. He didn't come in perpendicular. He didn't come at the camera. He low crawled, and he was behind a berm, kind of a barrier, and there was a big power transmission area, and that's where he was headed, and the head popped up, and we picked it up, bounding box, everything, live talk, or the audio talk down, and then the dispatch push notification. It did its job. Mm-hmm. Person jumped up and took off running like a bat out of hell, and then he was triggered while he's running, while he's hauling ass through another scene. The next camera picked him up far because he ran. And he was again had to be pushing that 500 plus range, where the next camera picked him up. Bounding box popped, secondary trigger, right? Secondary talk down, and just kept him pushing him further away. So that was impressive. And then I think about a week or two later, we had another incident, same thing, coming in to hit that power.
Probably the same guy.
It might have been. He didn't have a backpack though this time, so I don't know if it's the same guy or what, but it was a similar event that they tried. And but after that, now it's been a couple of months, we haven't had any instances yet. So it's like funny how it's one or two of the same people that keep coming back. And this client had a guard company. They were paying a lot of money for a guard company to have shifts and rotations to be there. And the mobile surveillance, we caught him. We did his job, and now it's truly a sterile environment, which is impressive. So is the thought then, and this is maybe a rhetorical question, but the thought process here for us with Evolon as a partner, I guess it's proactive. It's not reactive. That's where Evolon is the force multiplier here. We want to have a mind about how do we be proactive in detection and deterrence and notification, right? Feeding up the data to the users so they know what's going on in their scene without having to go look for it. That's correct use case for you guys. That's your sweet spot. That's
correct, right? Real time, taking an incident. I always like to put it in perspective of if this happens, then do that, right? So there's a lot of inputs and then outputs that we can integrate, right, together in terms of, do I want an input to be an access control trigger? Maybe there's an IO relay that initiates an event that I already have built into my standard operating procedure with Evolon. So if that happens, then do this. If someone breaches the perimeter, I want you to do the following action. If someone is loitering in a certain zone, I want you to follow a different action. So it's all about, what would you do if your security system could do something for you, right, in real time when you're not there? And with our focus being after hours, the beauty of what we do from an end user experience is that we're really selling peace of mind, right? Like that end user, the security director, the business owner, they're going to get a full night's sleep because we're taking care of business on behalf of them, right? And we're only going to interrupt that sleep if it's absolutely necessary. Otherwise, I always like to, as we're talking with end users, right, the goal is that when you show up in the morning, you're going at full speed into your business, right? You're not dealing with an insurance claim. You're not trying to find a glass repair company for your front door. You're not trying to replace a fleet truck because it's missing all the parts and it can't go out on its route. And so at the end of the day, that's really what it's about, right? How do we keep their business running, and with it being focused after hours without them having to be a part of it?
You know what, that statement right there is half the reason I am so impressed with your software. Is a lot of times in other providers, you'll have the integrators, access into their GUI, their front end, and then you've got the end users. And what you guys have built yours so smartly, it's the end user and the integrator's front end is the same unit, because at a glance it's so beautiful. If something goes offline, our support center is instantly alerted through text and email, but you open up the software and at a glance I can see anywhere what's down, at a glance, and we know exactly where to go. It's nothing but a click to get more detail on it. And so that's one of the things that really just kind of knocked my socks off is just how intuitive and how it presents information to you. That's what we need to talk a little more about.
Yeah, insights.
Yeah.
So, because we talked about what the analytics are able to do and at what range. I think that's so important. And I love the fact that we can talk range, we can talk distance. It's not, I don't know. I mean, I deal with this every day when we're working with consulting with clients. What we look at it, we walk aside or we look at a Google Earth shot and we're trying to figure out, like, okay, if somebody comes in on this property, are we going to be able to pick them up or not? Or how many MSUs do we need, or what cameras do we need? And we can reliably design a system around reliable detection range at big ranges, so that saves a ton of money because it's a lot less devices that are required. So we talked about that. We talked about how we balance accurate detection versus accurate verification, and that's with the filtering, right? That's the kind of the Jemez, good, awesome long-range detection, but then we're verifying, cross-checking with Evolon Edge and the AI that you guys have developed over the last several years. So that's amazing. So now let's spend some time to dive into insights. And what is insights? Because Edge is the analytic. Now what's insights? Can you dive into that for us, Tanner?
Yeah, absolutely. So Evolon Insights is our cloud-based platform that's used both for the service provider, the system integrator, and the end user. And the nice thing, to Scott's point, is that having the different user roles allows it to be the same platform. So when the service provider is logged in, they have full visibility to all of their customers, right? All of those sites, every camera underneath that customer, the status of the camera, is it online, is it offline? They have instant information about the performance of the system, right? So how are the analytics? How's the AI verification working? Is it working in the way that we intended, or do we need to make adjustments as the service provider, right? And then it's also the same platform that the technicians use to do the installation and the onboarding of the system. And so if I stay on the service provider lane for a moment, one of the challenges to getting video monitoring effective in the field is the time to deploy, right? And so, and admittedly, right, this is where we started as well. A lot of times you have what's called a fact sheet or a standard operating procedure, right? So sometimes integrating the technology is one step. You connect all those devices, plug them into a central station, and then you work with that central station to fill out some sort of a form. In a lot of cases, it's a PDF, whether that's manual and you scan it back in, or maybe it's a fillable PDF that's emailed back to the central station.
We've been there and done that, haven't we, Scott, over the years?
Yeah, and it adds time, right?
Because sometimes weeks.
Yeah, I need to fill this out. I need to research it. And so one of the things that we looked at doing probably about 8 months ago is we loaded that fact sheet into the same portal that the technician is using. So I think Rick just did this about a week ago, right? You go from configuring your cameras to clicking into a different tab and completing the fact sheet, which tells Evolon what our standard operating procedure should be for that site. And so at that point, we're set and ready to rip to a burn-in and a go-live in the monitoring operations center.
Now, hold on one sec, Tanner. I need to add to this, so because this is huge. It's the portal, as you described it, is cloud-based. So you just browse right in. I could be a Safari user. I could be a Chrome. Doesn't matter. You browse in, username, passwords, email and password, and you're in. And it's beautiful for us because we've gone and hired and built out a team now to Scott's point earlier, like the health monitoring pieces in there. We used to have to use a separate company, a separate software package, a separate cost, a separate portal to monitor the health of all of these MSUs because they're critical. We have to know if one goes down so that we can fix it rather than wait for the customer to say, hey, my trailer went down or a camera went offline for some reason, what's going on? And we find out it got shot out, or something happened to it and we didn't know until there was an incident. And that's usually when, whether it's an MSU or an on-prem camera, usually you find out the dang thing's down because something happened. And you're like, oh, shoot, how long has this been down for? So we were using a separate company. So we've built out a team to leverage insights just for the health monitoring, generate tickets, communicate with the customer. Hey, we've got a guy come. The customer doesn't even know. Because you know what? Now the customers aren't even looking at the cameras anymore because they're reliant on insights to feed them the information. Like you had an event last night. Here's the report, which we'll touch on. But I just wanted to make sure we're really clear. The portal's browser-based. It's cloud managed.
Yes.
It's super powerful. And the customer, me, the technician, the support manager, you guys, we can all see that fact sheet got filled out or we're missing a couple of things. And here's the other point too that's huge. It changes. It's dynamic. So you might want us today to call XYZ guard company if there's an event, or XYZ dispatch center for whatever jurisdiction, or XYZ manager, right, on-site manager because it's a construction project, but that guy, he left. He's no longer there. Or as the project progresses, things change. Trailer gets moved. It might go down the road to another. If it's owned by law enforcement, right? They move them around all the time. And so that fact sheet changes. And we used to get a big bottleneck because it was a an analog process, I call it,
right,
where it was a document, right? So you had to email the document. It would take a week or two sometimes to even the customer to even communicate that the trailer was moved. And so now we say, well, we need a new fact sheet because you can't go in and modify the old one.
We've had corporate get quite upset that something's not active, but their local branch manager won't respond with the emergency list and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This, just the way that you've designed the platform, really eliminates so many of the clunky things that the processes that it takes just to put an account live. So
we're at war with criminals, right? And in war, in battle, communication is number one. If you don't have communication, you are done. And so that's the key with Insights, just that fact sheet. I'm sorry to go off on the tangent on the fact sheet, but that is imperative.
It is.
You guys take the cake with it for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the fact sheet is our living and breathing document that ends up translating into what actions the operator does on behalf of that client, right? And so that is one of the most critical pieces of the entire process. And I know we'll talk about monitoring operations at some point, but the exciting part about that fact sheet being digital and connected to the platform is that if I make that change right now at 1 p.m., I'm going to immediately have that SOP changed. So when the monitoring operator is engaging on that site that night, they're already seeing a different SOP. So I'm not having to take a PDF, translate it into the alarm automation tool to adjust the SOP. This is seamless and it's very fast. Now, if I flip the table, the other use case for the Insights platform is the customer, right? The end user. And so whether they're accessing it via the mobile app or they're accessing it on the browser-based, your primary function is visibility, right? So how's my system performing? So the end user can see all of their cameras. We store video events in the cloud, so they can also do a forensic search, whether that's a basic forensic search or one powered by large language models for sort of a smart Copilot search. And more importantly, and most recently, we launched what we call the Alarm Dashboard. And the Alarm Dashboard was driven by end user demand, right? Security directors who were coming to us saying, I need a better way to identify what happens at night, right? I know that the job's being done because my equipment is all still here, right? But I need to know what happens so that I can communicate that internally, so that I can monitor the activity that's taking place. And so we created a very visual interface. And now the end user gets a daily report via email that they can launch into the platform. They're looking at the Alarm Dashboard. It's telling them, hey, Rob, last night we had 3 talkdowns. We had to dispatch police 1 time. You click into that incident, you get a full user interface for the incident report with the Google pin of where that site was, what the video event, right? Why did we get this video event? There's a live video of the trigger. And then you have an audit log, which for me, I think the transparency portion of this to the end user is the most important, right? We're telling them exactly how fast did we process the event and put it into the operations center, right? Yeah. So how fast was the technology itself working? And then once it was received, how fast did the operator then take it from the queue and act on it? How long did we spend, right? How much manpower did we put on that incident itself? Sometimes we're engaging with that site for 2 minutes. Sometimes it's 20 minutes, right? As the event unfolds. And then more importantly, every action, because when I looked at the 3 parts of the tech stack, right? You have detection and verification, and then you have response. And because we are fully developing and integrated into the response part, the monitoring operations center, we have visibility to every single data point in the automation platform itself. And so we're pulling that data and then we're surfacing it for the end user so that they can see, for instance, the alarm was received at this timestamp. The operator received the incident and acknowledged it. They initiated the first talkdown. They initiated the second talkdown. They called Rob. They called the police, all the way to the point where the police arrive and the incident is marked as a full clear. And so I think we talked about this earlier, but the exciting part for me is you look at the end users that are engaging with this, and it's a daily interaction, right? So they sit down with a cup of coffee and they find out what happened last night. And you'd be surprised how many directors of security we sit down and talk with that they didn't know what activity was happening,
Yeah.
right? They don't know that the cleaning crew shows up at Tuesday night at 3 a.m. to clean their facilities.
Yep.
No one in facilities had told the security director that, or that all of a sudden 10 people walk onto their property every evening. Some of them sleep there. Some of them damage the facility. It's interesting how, and you were on the, on the actual security side, it's interesting how much they love getting that information because now they're tied in. Mm-hmm. During the daytime, they understand the ebbs and flows of their facilities. Yeah. But when they're asleep, if they don't have that information, maybe they go back to the video management software and they kind of rewatch film, right? Like a sports coach. Yeah. But no one has the time for that. So this gives me a very fast snapshot. Last night, what happened?
You hit the nail on the head. All the previous systems provided you the ability to go search for what you are looking for. Your platform provides you what you should be looking at. That's, it takes all that effort away. So I agree with that. And that's what's built confidence with me, is I don't have to go search for information. Your platform provides it right then and there and says, this is what you should be aware of this, you should be aware of this. Yeah. And it's so beautiful because other services, it's like pulling teeth to get a response log out of the monitoring center on what really happened. Sometimes it can take 24, 48 hours to get a detailed report.
And it doesn't even make any sense when you get it.
Yours is live on demand right then and there. Yeah. It's a beautiful thing. I showed this to one of our national accounts, and we're switching everything over as soon as they saw the ability for them to do oversight that way.
Not a day goes by that I don't talk to. This morning, I mean, just driving in to do this with you guys, I had a customer I'm working with out of Texas, and they're having their manufacturing facility, so they're having theft problems big time. Yeah. Well, they just got acquired by private equity, so now if they want to make an investment to either do our rental program. We do a subscription-based program, and we also have CapEx, right, where you buy the asset and you own it. And then the services are pro monitoring, or do you want monitor it yourself? And so is communicating with them the difference between the two, which now is probably a good time to maybe dive into the difference between those two. But they like, as I explained to him, because he has to go before a board now and say, here's my options. We can do a operational expenditure, and it's X amount of dollars, which he already told me, and I've been in these board meetings, he's going to get pushback because they're going to say, wait, you want to spend X amount, $2,000 a month, let's say, to deploy a trailer, a MSU, and have it pro monitored. And he's going to say, yeah, but these are the incidents that we're having problems with. And they're going to do some math. Well, is it over the course of a year? Is it worth it or not? So the report and the ability for him, and that's where I was sharing with him, like we will send you, when you wake up in the morning, you're going to have a report. And it's easy. It's PDF, and you just click on it's going to show you an image of the incident, and you click on it. It's going to play you the video, and you can hit export, and you can send it to whoever you need, and it's going to show time on target, right? We caught the person. This is what we did, and this is how long it took us to do it. And my average I've seen with a lot of these sites deployed is around 2 to 3 seconds to time on target. Yeah. Which that's because of the low bandwidth.
It's all time stamped too, so it's not just you're not just saying it.
You has the name of the operator that was engaging, right? Yeah. This is the person that handled this event. So that is for a guy like that, right? For an end customer that's having to go in the boardroom and ask for money, which we've all had to do it, and it's not fun to do if you're not prepared. You look like an idiot. And we don't want our customers to look dumb, and we also want them to know the value of what they're going to get. And he was super impressed. So to Scott's point, I see, and I deal with this almost every day. Everybody I talk to, just trying, and that's why we're doing this episode, so that we can educate on how this technology looks, feels, and works, and the ROI. Fancy buzzword people use, but how do you establish the ROI if you don't have the data? And you guys serve up the data, and it's beautiful. And I know it's only going to get better. I mean, this is a pretty new thing, this detailed reporting and the ease of access to it. But we continue to provide feedback on what else we'd like to see. For example, one of them is we've asked for the ability to be able to, so we get the event, like you serve up the events beautifully, and you click on it and it plays. It's amazing. I don't have to sit and wait for it to spin sometimes with like a traditional old school VMS. Like most of these MSU, these trailer companies, the ones that have been around for a while, they're built on old code. They have old code that they've tried to Band-Aid. They were never built for this type of application. And, you have to put in a request to get the video. Yeah. Right? You have to say, hey, I need, I don't know when the event occurred. I just know it was in the last 24 hours or the last week, whatever. For that much video, you have to put in a ticket, and it takes sometimes weeks, sometimes 24, 48 hours. But it takes a long time to then get that video sent to you. You can download it off like an FTP site. That's ridiculous. That's unacceptable.
But I assume if you pay an extra fee, then you get access to unlimited of those incident reports.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
You're
good.
100% right. And it's a bait and switch. And it's because it's written on old code. That's what it comes down. So you ask yourself, why? Why would a company do that if they tout themselves as we're the industry leader in mobile security units? Why would they do that? Well, you have old code. And so it's going to cost a lot of money. And now you've taken all these rounds of VC funding. I'm going on a fun tangent here, but it's true. This is the state of the industry. When you have old code and you have thousands of MSUs deployed out there and you've gotten too big for your britches and you've taken a lot of VC funding, you're in trouble.
You have a company in mind as you say those things.
Oh yeah. And that's
actually happened.
It's happening right now.
More than once.
Yeah. And so we're in a really good spot with being nimble, that we can innovate and continually innovate, and we have an eye to what best of breed technology, right? Open platform, feeding up this data. So Insights is really impressive for those reasons that we can feed it up.
You're ahead of the market. You're ahead of the market just because of what you develop. The second you listen. We run into challenges, and we really appreciated how Evolon has listened to our input. We don't want two interfaces. We don't want two portals, one to manage the camera system and the alarms, and another one to manage the power system on the trailer. We bring that up to you. Guess what Evolon does? They marry them together. We still have one platform. You do stuff like that for us. We're with you for life. It's just that simple. Because you're making our life better. You're providing a better platform for our customers. They're happier. We're happier. Life is good.
You mentioned your CEO, Tom, so he's become a good friend of ours as we've worked together, as have you, Tanner, of course. Don't want to leave you out. The whole team. I mean, it's great to work with the team, and that's partnerships are built on that. You have to have those good relationships of trust and listen to each other. And just like we listen to our end customers, so we can innovate and be really fluid. Be quick to innovate too. Not take 3-4 years we'll come out with this. Like, we want to be nimble. So that being said, Tom is very technical, and that's always intrigued me. Usually when you deal with that C-suite level, especially in a lot of software companies, we see this in integration firms. Like that level, they don't have that street experience. They don't have the technical experience. They're put in there by the board to run the company, right? Make it more profitable, build it up to sell it, what have you. But they don't have an ear to the ground of the industry. Most of them, in a lot of cases, don't even really know much about cameras, right? They don't know much about analytics, but they're at an analytic company. Tom has really impressed me with his technical acumen. Like when we have conversations of, hey, we need X, Y, Z, usually I don't even have to explain why. He's like, I get it, it makes sense. He's like, I totally understand. Like, yeah, we'll put that on our dev list. Let's get it done. That is how you guys will be successful, and that's why we're successful together for sure.
Yeah.
All right. I want to talk now. I'm already kind of keyed on this a little. You have monitor it yourself. You have pro monitoring. I already mentioned monitor it yourself. We offer at no cost to our customers, as long as they have our cell data plan. We just roll that into the cell data. We think that's the right thing to do, and it really enhances their experience. It gives them they get the interface with what Evolon Insights offers. However, they do have to get woken up at night if it's 2 a.m. and you have a bad guy. If it's monitor yourself, you have to figure out, like, how are you going to get that event? Or that's something you got to deal with, right? So pro monitoring, we take that off their plate. So that's a full white glove suite So I think monitor yourself's handled. If you can touch on pro monitoring, what that includes, if you have audio, then we get the talk down. If you don't have audio, no talk down. Obviously, that's a big miss. I think you should have audio, and then also Copilot. Want to dive a little deeper in that because that's and then next thing is SOS. Those are kind of the options, right? If you're gonna go buy a truck, do you want leather? Do you want a sunroof? With Evolon, you have pro monitoring. You have monitor yourself. We already talked. So pro monitoring, Copilot, and SOS. Those are the three that I'd like you just to touch on. What are they? Why would you need them? Why wouldn't you need them?
Yeah, so this is exciting because we're hitting the third leg of the stool, right? The third step. We've talked about Evolon Edge, which was Jemez. We detect something. We moved to Evolon Verify. We have the verification engine. Then we have an alert, and we need and then what, right? So there's different routes that alert can go to. And monitor it yourself, like you mentioned, right? At a localized level, you can be armed with a mobile app where you get the push notification, and that is where the SOS probably comes most into play, right? Because you're the one who's responding, and when you get to a level where you get the notification from Evolon Verify, we have a verified event. You've received it to your phone. Well, now I need help, right? But I don't run a security operations center, and I'm not going to dispatch police. So that's where SOS comes in with monitor it yourself. So I can initiate that SOS, slide to dispatch, and then now I have accessed pro monitoring, but on demand, right? Not as I need it, rather than every night, which is a really affordable entry into pro.
Yep. So on that, real quick, if I monitor it myself, event comes to my phone. You guys feed it up beautifully, right? I'm probably getting it within 1 or 2 seconds of the event occurring, which is money. So now I'm looking at it, and there is a weirdo at my property, and he's, shouldn't be there. I hit SOS. Am I now communicating with dispatch?
So now dispatch is acting in the same way they would that pro monitoring would work, right? So in the same way that if the alarm had been received, it's now received, but it's received in a duress, right? It's almost been pre-verified by a human, right? So think of that as the digital version of a panic button. So now when it receives in the queue, it's red hot. And that monitor operators will now access the video, they're seeing what you're seeing, and now they're interacting and following your SOP, right? And so when we do establish an SOS for a monitor it yourself, we'll understand the SOP in the same way that we would a pro customer. And so in that way, you're getting the full benefit of pro, but only when you need it. Now, the alternative could be that someone's monitoring themselves and they're the one who wants to respond. And I think that takes us into a different use case for MIY or monitor yourself, where you might have an enterprise security operations center, right? And they deal with the same issues that we deal with in the operations center, and that's false alarms, false alarm fatigue, operator efficiency, scaling,
turnover.
And so in that case, right, we can still layer those two pieces of technology, the detection, the verification, and instead of routing that alarm, let's say maybe to the mobile app or to Pro, we're going to route it to your SOC, right? And then in that case, we're making an enterprise end user much more effective at what they do. And so I'll shift to Pro, because I also think in some ways there's a lot of overlap in all of these, right? You might, and we will, encounter enterprise customers that are monitoring themselves on some locations. Maybe those are highly critical. They're willing to staff up 1 or 2 people, and then they're going to be using Pro monitoring, MSUs, fixed, in different maybe remote sites, secondary sites, where Backstreet is the one providing the service. So if I focus on Pro, one really nice thing about Pro is this is the peace of mind product, right? This is everything is hands off. We've established our SOP, and we're only engaging with you when you've told us to, right? At whatever escalation level that is. Sometimes we're in an automotive dealership and they want us to be nice first, right? Let's, sorry, Rob's dealership is currently closed. We open up at 8 a.m. tomorrow, right? And then obviously I see you pull out a crowbar. I'm going to step 2 in the SOP, right?
Yep.
We have other places like natural gas interchanges or utility substations. That is an immediate dispatch to police while the audio talk down is taking place, right? So we are doing those things simultaneously because we are not even asking questions. The police need to arrive in order to document the incident, right? So with Pro, we sit down together as a team and we establish that SOP. This is a really exciting thing to work with the customer on because it matches up with their standard operating procedure. And so in a lot of cases, when we're sitting down with a director of security at a large company, we're actually embedding what Backstreet is doing into their overall standard operating procedure as a strategy for security, which, going back to the discussion that they're going to need to have with the board, now this professional video monitoring service is an augment or an enhancement of his or her like overall security posture and security plan for that organization. So with Pro, we have our SOP set up. We're ready to rock and roll. So what happens when we get to the deployment is a team like Backstreet, right? Backstreet sets everything up, and we go into what's called a burn-in. A burn-in usually lasts about 48 hours, and that's where the analytics, the AI, and the operations center get comfortable with how that site operates. So how many alarms are coming in? What's the level of activity? Do we need to fine-tune, back to the earlier conversation? And once that is dialed in, then we go live. And at go live, that's where we're now acting on behalf of the client in real time every single night. Now, you asked about talk down. When we look at professional monitoring, if we don't have a speaker or a siren or a strobe, right, we only have the ability to see what's taking place. And we can obviously dispatch police or we can call the customer and engage with them, but there's no engagement with the site itself. And so active deterrence as a whole, whether that's talk down or sirens or lighting or strobes, that is a critical component to proactive security. I think I've heard you on a previous podcast talk about like even things like signage and if we can deter the activity, that's the ultimate goal. There's a case study that we were reviewing with the team a little bit earlier, and you can see an immediate drop in activity, about 60% less right after the installation of a speaker with some lighting. Because as we engage with the site, we're now getting that potential criminal to leave before they ever make the action to our customer's property, assets, or people. And that's the end goal, right? So talk down, highly effective, and almost not a mandatory, but a kind of a default recommendation.
I agree. It affects their train of thought. I mean, we want to affect change in the mental thought of a bad actor. They're walking up, they're planning it, whatever. Like we want to create a change that left before incident, right? Not always after. It's law enforcement's already pretty busy. They've already committed the crime. Like we put them in jail. Hopefully you affect change there. No, let's make them change their mind before they commit the crime, if at all we can.
Yeah, and law enforcement resources are stretched pretty thin all across the country, right? You see initiatives like AVS01 and others that are pushing for video verification for police dispatch, and that's sort of the ultimate step in the result of what happens when, as an industry, we deploy technologies in every commercial application that just send blind alarms to law enforcement, and we've sold a service, but we expect them to be the free response layer for our service offering, right? And so, what's nice about Talk Down as well is we become really good stewards of law enforcement resources, right? And so, and we go back to the case study that we were reviewing earlier. When you look at week after week, the more active we become with things like active deterrence, talk downs, sirens, strobes, we can actually lead to fewer police dispatches. So we start self-policing the commercial facility. And the nice outcome of that is that when we do have to use police resources, right, that police officer, the dispatch center, they see that as a critical. It's sort of the story of the boy that cries wolf, right? You send too many police dispatches to a location, and they're going to say, that Backstreet office, man, I got another alarm. I don't want to go over there. It's going to be a false one. Or we get to the point where they trust it, and when they do get an alarm from the Backstreet office, they say, all right, crime in progress, video verified evidence. I trust it. I'm going to go do something about it.
Their adrenaline's going. They want to get. Cops love to catch bad guys, right?
They do.
When we help them by providing a good tool.
Yeah, don't waste their time.
Yeah,
they don't like that.
No.
And I think before I go to the Copilot, one thing that gets married up well with the talk down or any sort of form of active deterrence is the distance factor that we talked about earlier, right? So if I think about what the monitoring operator is doing, we can hand them the event in seconds, right? But for them, the currency that they're operating with is time, right? The more time that they have from the perpetrator at the fence line to the front door, the roll-up door of a warehouse, that time is the activity that they can engage with, active deterrence, police dispatch. And so the further away we can get step one, which is detection, completed, the more time that they have to maybe automatically turn on some strobe lights around the perimeter of the fence line or initiate a siren. Act in multiple layers of defense in order to get that crime pushed away from the property versus if I'm receiving the alarm in the operations center and that person is 50 feet from the front door, I have to make a split-second decision about whether that person is good or bad and what their intention looks like and what activity based on the SOP I'm supposed to follow. So giving them more time makes the talk down and the strobes and all of that much more effective.
Now on the strobes real quick, because we're testing we love the Axis D4200. That's a speaker strobe. It's a dynamic, right? So we can do, I think it's like up to 16 different color combinations that can be event driven. So vehicle, again, it's case by case, but a lot of times a vehicle comes in, we'll have that strobe flash. It's always blue. We'll have it flash red, blue, white. But then, when it's a person detected, then we'll have it go, faster flash or brighter because you can adjust the brightness too. And then it has a speaker. Now, with the pro monitoring, we have the ability as part of that onboarding, not only can we customize, because all of our customers are different. Some of them say, I want you to say this, or to your point, be nice first, and then scenario two, get a little more aggressive with them, escalate. Same thing though with the lighting. The dispatch, the operator can initiate the lighting, and that can be custom driven based on the customer desire, correct?
That is correct, right? So we built our platform on the Axis audio backbone, right? Which brought us into like the C1310 for very large environments, the D4200 for its dynamic sound and visual deterrent. If you look at Evolon as a whole, right, in the roadmap development, right, whether it's an expansion of the speaker brand or the devices on site that you can interact with, there's a really exciting future where we can together, right, we can integrate solutions in order to create layers of defense. And so you could imagine, right, if there's a IP lighting system that we could put along the fence line, it might be nice to initiate that first, right? Maybe it's a bright white light, floodlight on me. Okay. If I continue, now we escalate to a siren that's on site. So different devices that can be used.
System, you can kick the sprinklers on.
And I like that idea.
I mean, just IOs, right? We just need an IO module, a networked IO module, and we could. That's so fun. We should. I'm sure we'll have a customer that wants that eventually, and if they do, come to us because we'll figure it out. Like that's just to tie into the IO. Because Axis has a ton of input-output modules, or the cameras have IOs. Yeah, the bridge has an IO.
So you go back to what I said earlier, right? If this happens, then do
it's
that.
Just Boolean logic.
And so we ask ourselves when we sit down together, both Evolon, Backstreet, the end user, and we decide, what do we have access to? What does this environment look like? What are our potential threat vectors? And how can we use technology to actively deter it? And so we can run different scenarios. We can install different technologies. So it's highly effective, and it's pretty fun to sit back now. And because we can get that alert in seconds to the operator, we can do a whole host of things to engage with that site.
Yeah. I mean, you look at like the protests. Been pretty quiet now, but when we get closer to elections again, I mean, whatever, like just things happen, and like it just is what it is. But during the protest, that was a big thing: is turn on the sprinklers. If there's going to be a protest in an area, you get those sprinklers turned on, and you're just moving it away from you, right? So
it's called deterrence.
There you go. Yeah. We're just playing the real bad song. I mean, there's just really bad areas I've done work in where I'll do the speakers, and during business hours, we're talking about when it should be sterile, but during business hours, that speaker's still usable. Just have it play a cycle, just keep playing the same bad song. I've done the mosquito sound. I don't know if you guys look up the worst sound in the world, and it's just a loud like mosquito sound, and just have that play at
it's just an irritant.
Yeah, so
Sure.
so vagrancy, like all these challenges that you deal with when you're trying to run a business, like that just keeps them off of the property.
I mean, like we had a property that was property of the state of California up in Lake Tahoe, and it was the land was going to be reclaimed for nature, and so you have this building that's vacant, fence line around it, and honestly, one of the audio talk downs that was pre-configured was a dog barking because they were actually more concerned about bears breaking in to find a warm space and then burrow in the facility, and so. Really dynamic. I think the one thing to mention, especially because you play so heavily in the MSU, mobile surveillance space, is that I want to distinguish the active deterrence that we're doing is not sort of automated, right? Like the camera's not sensing the person and then automatically playing the sound. This is a judgment call that a human being is making in real time. And that's where we can create a lot of layers of defense that the human who's a trained security professional can make the judgment call on how to engage with the devices on site in real time. That way the criminal doesn't hear the same message playing over and over.
Well, okay, that's it right there, because we've seen the first step of deterrence is just the physical awareness that there's security or surveillance on site, right? You can have a building with 20 cameras on it and the people hit it left and right.
Yeah.
You put a trailer up front with some blue lights and they go away. Well, that worked. That's the first level, but why are they coming back? Because they don't respect the tech. They think that it is just a scarecrow. Is what they think. Now the next thing is, and I've seen this before, you're right, so there's a lot of techs out there that are selling pre-canned messages. Hey, we see you, leave now. But then he comes back the next day and he hears the exact same message in the exact same tone. And then he knows it's just an automated system. So the threat level to him has dropped dramatically. You can tell when you're talking to a human, right? And that's the difference. I think it's important too, and that is the value or advantage of pro monitoring is that you get there's something going on. You've got it. It's verified, and because the nuisance of those speakers are 120 decibels. And so you can't have that thing just going off because it ran away. Because there's, you have a windstorm and you got something flapping in the wind, or you have a deer that's grazing or a herd of deer. Because object-based analytics on the edge from the best cameras, from Hanwha and Axis, I mean, those aren't fail-proof. I mean, AOA triggers on animals. I've got a cat. I've got a dog. I have AOA run at my house, and I have a D4100 that triggers, and it triggers quite a bit off of AOA, and this is at close range, by the way, too. I'm not even talking about the challenges of detecting further away, like 500 plus feet. It's not fail-proof, and so like if I had neighbors that were close to me, I'm sure they would not be happy. I mean, I know my wife isn't happy when I have to turn it off. She's like, why is that thing flashing? And it's like, well, because the cat's on the front deck, So, but that's where I agree, like having that human verification and then ensuring that you play it on time, on target again, right? That you detected within a second or less typically. And now you're verifying, and then you're playing that message, and the message can be dynamic based on I how long they've been there and all those different things. So I think it's the right way to do it. And there's the additional value in professional monitoring.
Yeah, and I have two notes on Copilot. One of them going back to the scarecrow, thesis, and that is that we sit down with a lot of end users. You've probably had these same conversations where they're paying a pretty large amount for a mobile surveillance unit each month, and while it might have played a automated message, even if it's tailored to you, there's not an engagement on a police dispatch. And so we end up sitting down with these customers that have it in the parking lot, and there was a break-in, all the tools are gone, and then the question that the end user is asking is, if I pay all this money every month, what was the point of having it in the corner, right? Aside from, I guess, being able to go back and review the footage. And so I think there's a big shift happening at the end user level now that there's a lot of options on the market to say, like, if I'm comparing two options and one is the same price or maybe one is even more affordable, but it's more effective and there's real response, I'm going to choose that one all day, every day.
So Copilot is, would you say it's more forensic?
Yeah, so Copilot is, today Copilot is forensic search, forensic analysis. So we have a cloud-based storage platform. So we store all of our video events. The basic is for 30 days, and you can customize your cloud storage.
Yeah, we've got one for a year. Client that has to need it, they need it for a year.
And so you want to go back and look at those events at some point, right? And so there's traditional forensics search where you can go in and select a date range. Maybe you select a specific camera, and you say, I'm looking for a person or a person wearing a red shirt. And then that will automatically filter, for you. But there's a lot of clicks involved in that, right? And so when we look back at that pipeline, when we get to the verification stage, we're also grabbing metadata. And so as the AI is verifying that the object is in fact a person or vehicle, it's grabbing, okay, it's a person, what are they wearing and what is the color, right? So they're wearing a black polo. Do they have a hat? For vehicles, we're grabbing make, model, color. So, and I mentioned this earlier, and I think it's important in the world of AI development just to be transparent on what we can't do, right? Like, because we focus we stay very focused on the use case of after hours video monitoring. You won't see things like, tell me what my queue line was in the drive-through, or where should I put the T-shirt on the wall inside of the Target, right? There are fantastic analytics platforms for that. But when we do look at the Copilot search, what we have done is from an after-hours perspective, right? Maybe I parked in their parking lot, and tomorrow Scott's truck has like some white paint on the side, right? Or we know that there was an incident and I want to go back and figure out how did that person get in there. So the Copilot is using a large language model on the back end to surface the metadata based on the natural language search that the user puts in. So instead of multiple toggles, I can use text and I can say, show me all the white cars that were in my parking lot yesterday or on Tuesday, and it will automatically filter down. You could get even more specific if you knew that the person that stole packages was driving a BMW, or you could say, hey, show me the white BMW that was here throughout the last week or the last month, and it would automatically filter through and surface the white BMW car that you could look at. And so it's for the security director who gets the daily report, they see the incident and they want to go back and do a deeper analysis. It allows them to do that faster. So like you said earlier, right, we're pushing the data to them, but if they want to find it, the Copilot allows them to find it much quicker.
All right, so we were talking about thermals. So thermometric, that's what we would rely on for the alert, not Copilot.
Yeah, so Evolon's analytics, as they said today, are not developed to do the heat or the smoke detection themselves, where we would enable a third party. So like a thermal camera or a camera specialized in smoke detection, that could then if we go back to the 3 steps, that could become our trigger for detection. And so that specialized camera or the specialized third party that has spent a lot of time and development effort creating a good result there, then that will be verified and sent to an operator, and we can have a different SOP that follows, right? If we receive an alert from that type of alarm, how do you want us to respond? We might be calling a fire department instead of calling a police officer, right?
No, that makes total sense. So you could do the same thing with like water level. For like flood detection, that would be an event tied to the camera. So you'd use a water bug, water level sensor or moisture detection sensor tied to the input of a camera. So that triggers the event. The camera is what communicates to insights, goes to the operator. They have eyes on. So that's where there's a ton of flexibility, which is where also that was one of my questions. Why do you guys choose not to go try to sell direct to end users, rather partner with qualified, capable, reputable integrators? It's because we can connect all those dots, right, with all the peripheral stuff. Consult with the customer, figure out what they need, design, engineer the system that's going to work for them. So, okay, well, let's move on. A few hardware questions, Tanner, if you're okay with it.
No, right on.
So we know Evolon runs on ACAP, which is Access Camera Application Platform. You also run on Hanwha Edge. So depending on the model of cameras, right, if we're going back 10 years, some of those cameras probably we're not going to run on the Edge, depending on the chipset, the ASIC. But newer cameras, yes. But now walk us through, like, what if a customer doesn't have those two cameras or they're older? You guys have another option or another way that we can do this.
Yeah, so Evolon really has three primary deployment methods, right? So we have what we call Evolon Edge, which sits on the camera itself. On Axis, that's via ACAP. We can go back to about ARDPEC 5, so a pretty solid support in the marketplace. As we continue to advance Edge, you might see that bump into newer models because we need more horsepower to do more of on Edge compute. With Hanwha, they have what they call open platform, and the cameras that support that have a WiseNet chip versus maybe one that has a third-party security operations chip on it. So
like an Umbrella or something.
Like an Umbrella, exactly. And so we have a compatibility matrix that we can give to the end user. We take in the cameras that they have on site. That it tells us what our compatibility would look like on a direct camera level. That's one of the easier deployments because it's a direct camera to cloud. So on a mobile unit, that's nice because we're not adding hardware to the platform, right? When we get into a large enterprise deployment, though, we may not want to install on every single camera, right?
Right.
Or we might find that a lot of customers have their cameras on a segmented network, and so they don't want to have a direct camera to cloud connection, period. So then that brings us to the Evolon Bridge. And the Evolon Bridge we developed about 2 years ago, and it takes all of the code base that we built on Axis and Hanwha for over a decade, and we put it onto a small Linux appliance. That appliance can use both ONVIF as the primary discovery protocol or RTSP to grab whatever camera brand is on site and pull those camera feeds in. Now the nice thing about the bridge, the two network interface cards allow us to keep those cameras segmented, right? So for the IT directors that are listening, super IT friendly. Yeah. The other nice thing about it, though, is that with that bridge device deployed at the edge, it's running so much of that code that we can do a takeover of a building that might have 10-year-old cameras, 7-year-old cameras. They don't have any smarts and parts on them, but they have a good enough lens to give us the visual that we need. And so we're going to immediately pull into that bridge. We're running most of that edge right there on-prem, and then we follow the rest of the process that we talked about in this episode, right?
That's beautiful. We've got a national account. They're closing some pretty big production facilities right now, but they've got long-term leases on them, so they're responsible for those, right? They have old camera systems in there, right? So instead of deploying trailers or putting more cost into it, they could interface your monitoring services that way and utilize the existing older camera system in there. Is that right?
That is correct. Exactly.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Okay. Yeah. Now, every bridge supports up to 16 cameras. So for most commercial applications where we're looking at an outdoor security performance video monitoring application, that's more than sufficient. The other nice thing, though, is that that bridge device, you've got it sitting at the edge, and what it's doing is it's grabbing a separate stream. So we're not disrupting any of the existing security system that's in place today. So we're not adjusting the access control, visitor management, the video management software. That all rides, and they continue to use that as their primary security structure. And then that bridge becomes really the bridge to Evolon as well as the sort of the night shift, right? And so all it's doing is grabbing another stream and then acting as the video monitoring component of the overall security tech stack without us as the integrator or the end user having to physically integrate Evolon into any component that's on site. So that's been a really nice, when we get into these large deployments, they're running Milestone, Genetec. It's nice to just drop the bridge at one of the corporate offices or a warehouse. We pull our separate stream, we don't touch the camera network, and we're up and running in a matter of hours, which is nice.
That is awesome.
And then the third deployment method, right, is the VMS itself. And so when we start looking at the enterprise security operations centers or a very large physical deployment, today we have integrations to network optics, which gives us, Hanwha Wave, Digital Watchdog Spectrum. We also have a Milestone plugin. We're actively developing a Genetec plugin today. What these plugins allow us to do is, as a caveat, right, while you lose that first step, the edge, right, because now we're relying on the detections that come into the VMS, it does allow for scale. And so for a client that has hundreds or thousands of cameras, we can bump into that VMS, and then now we're acting as the filter between what the camera sent to that VMS and what's true, whether that's going to be responded to by their security operations team or responded to by us. So those are three different methods of
that's pretty compelling. So you guys would that be a monitor it yourself subscription in that case? Because you're just feeding it to the VMS, right? But you're filtering out all the false positives.
Exactly.
Love it.
And it could be a pro monitoring. So for example, we've got a partner where we've deployed to thousands of cameras and we're using the Hanwha Wave plugin. And the reason for that is instead of needing in phase one to roll a truck to all of these sites and drop a physical bridge device, we can do our plugin into Hanwha Wave. We can grab all of those cameras on site that we need to monitor, and we can get steps 2 and 3 accomplished, right? We're going to validate what the Hanwha cameras are sending to Wave, and then we're going to respond to it. And as we get either a maintenance role or a refresh project and someone is on site, they can drop the bridge, and now we add our step 1 and we've got the full stack. So there could be a potential where using that plugin in that example would allow us to scale video monitoring at a multi-location customer.
Yeah, that's exciting. I think it's really cool to see the progress of the roadmap and what else is coming. You mentioned a little bit ago AVS 01. It's AVS 01, right? We just,
correct.
Human nature, we say 01. I was in artillery in the military, and if you said O for a 0, that could be the result of a lot of bad things happening, like dropping a bomb on the wrong area. But we all do it, right? So AVS 01. What is that?
Yeah. So for those not familiar, if you look at the state of the intrusion market today, we've been installing intrusion for 20 plus years, right? And I mentioned earlier on that we create all of the alarms, and then the police department is the response layer to the services that we're, as an industry, making money on. The challenge is that fast forward now to 20 plus years down the road, we're in 2026. Every commercial office has an intrusion system. Every home has an intrusion system. So almost every building inside of a jurisdiction has a system that is now sending alarms to police. The problem is that, and these are effective systems, right? But the problem is that they can be unreliable. Whether it's a faulty sensor or a battery that's going bad that is shorting the sensor, or like we were talking about in a warehouse, you might have a beam that gets hit with a forklift, and then you go to arm the site, and now it's being tripped on an object. I've heard stories of large warehouses where birds come in during the day, and then at night the system's armed, and all of a sudden the motion detectors are going crazy.
Cats inside of warehouses, that's a huge thing. Big distribution centers, cats live inside them. Yeah. And those trigger PIR, right? You can get pet proof, but what if the cat's huge? And then PIR is passive infrared when your HVAC kicks on. If you got a curtain or something that flaps or moves that. So there's false positives all the time. So
we're creating all these false alarms, right? And we're sending them to the police. What happens is they show up to the warehouse that has the cat roaming in, and all the doors are locked. There has not been a break-in. And so over the last 10, 15 years, this happens night after night, right? The police departments show up and there's nothing there. It was a false alarm. So in the early days, what you started to see the police departments doing is they were enacting false alarm fines. So the first time they rolled to your location and there was, a false alarm, we're not going to fine you, but we're going to give you a warning. And then the second one might be $50. Third one might be $100, right? Well, now you look at most jurisdictions, almost every one of them has a false alarm policy, and they're not as simple as $50. A lot of them start at $100, $150. They have an escalation that can sometimes go up to, like here in Salt Lake City, it goes up to $450. And then when you get to the $450, there's no cap. So we were having a conversation with a coffee company in California. They had a $4,000 false alarm bill in a month. Right, because in Riverside, California, you are just every false alarm is a policy break.
Nuisance. The whole system is just a nuisance at that point.
Exactly. So take it one more step further. You've got a lot of police and jurisdictions across the country that then created something called a nuisance cap, where they would say, okay, we're going to fine you, but after the fifth false alarm, we're just going to not respond. Right. So you've been capped. You're done. And then you take that one more step further and they would remove your permit. So if you hit your cap, then you might get a warning. If you do that again in another month and we continue, we're going to remove your permit. You can no longer send alarms to the police department. Now, what AVS 01 has done to the industry, it's a really strong scoring framework that was created between the Monitoring Association, TMA, and the police dispatch associations across the country. And what it does is it establishes a 4-score system for police dispatch or alarm signals that come from the alarm industry. And I think the most important thing to point out is that when AVS 01 is enabled or enacted inside of a local jurisdiction, a blind alarm, so a traditional intrusion alarm, is below the threshold of being received. So it will not even make it into the hands of a police dispatcher to be put into the queue for a dispatch. And so AVS 01 effectively forces video verification for police dispatch. And then what it does beyond that is that when you look at the top scores, you have a video verified event, right? You have a video verified event which includes an active crime with damage to property, and then the highest score being an active crime with threat to human life. And so those top two, the net to the end user is that when we enact a system like Evolon, which is fully AVS 01 compliant, right? So when we get our events today, we're already pre-scoring every alarm as to the standards, so that if a jurisdiction makes that change, we're already sending it that way, right? And so we won't skip a beat for our customers. What happens is now when we do the dispatch and it has a score, it can be routed to the correct authorities and they'll respond to it. So that's in a nutshell, that's AVS 01. It's a framework that's being adopted by most of the major metros. Salt Lake City was the first one to adopt the standard in the nation, and in most major metros, you look at Los Angeles, you look at Portland, Seattle, and the surrounding towns afterwards. So it starts at a metro, the surroundings start to adopt it. Yeah. And so one of the things that we do at Evolon is, I keep track of that for our end users. All of this information is publicly available, right? Police chiefs, you can see when they go into the city council meetings and they sort of initiate the discussion because it's in the meeting minutes, right?
Yeah.
The police chief comes, like take the city of Austin, Texas, for instance, right? A few months back, the police chief was sitting there saying, I don't have the resources to respond and we have a false alarm problem. I need, just letting everyone know, I am going to be looking at moving to a video verification, right? So that's our trigger to start notifying customers like, this is happening. We need to create a security strategy that's going to make you compliant for when that does take place.
Yep. Well, because they get the notice. We've had plenty of customers on the burglar alarm side that will email and say, hey, I got this notice from Salt Lake City saying that they won't respond anymore unless video verification. What does that mean? Or like you said, Seattle, or the state of Washington, all construction sites, the insurance providers are requiring that they have cameras that are monitored, and for good reason, because a camera that's not monitored largely could be just a dumb scarecrow device that you're just watching video post incident and trying to figure out what happened. But it's not stopping the problem, which is insurance claims.
Yeah.
You're still getting hit, and they're having to pay out those big claims. So it's pretty interesting how it's our industry is evolving and changing.
And insurance policies, I've seen insurance policies where the customer sends us their insurance policy because it's requiring before the policy will take effect that we're UL monitored cow camera on wheels is deployed, meeting certain requirements, which is pretty much the standards in the industry. Yeah.
Okay, let's see. We don't have too much left. Well, I mean, we could talk all day. This is fun, but let's see. What's a good involved in a good site assessment, right? As we work together with the customer, what are kind of I just want to paint that picture. Like, is you're an end user, you're engaging us. Like, hey, I think I might need some surveillance units, or I might need some help with my camera system I already have. Because it's purely reactive right now, right? Or I'm just trying to figure out what do I need. What are the things we need to do a good assessment for the customer? What are the questions that we would like to prompt them to be ready? Because we're going to ask these things, right? One of them is budget. Well, what's your budget? Have you thought about that? And we can help them define that for sure. Like we don't expect them to always have the budget, but that's where we can be a resource. But yeah, just dive into that, Tanner and Scott. What do you guys how do we point the customer to be ready?
I just straight up ask them, what are your expectations? What's your greatest concerns? What do you view the largest challenge? And then adapt the technology to that. That's the cool thing about your platform. Oh, you want pro monitoring? You want self-monitoring? Well, I got a guard service. They've got 6 locations, 6 offices around the country. And they're struggling to compete on large contracts. So they came to us. We equip them with the self-monitoring aspect of it, right? So now they go out on site and they deploy 2 or 3 mobile units with 1 roving guard rather than 6 or 7 guards, right? And so each application's different. So you want to apply the technology to the goal and what kind of assets you have on site.
Yeah.
Right? But a lot of times, the customer, they're not really sure what they need to do. They've just got stuff missing, and they're looking to people like us to suggest application ideas. I mean, that's really where it's at. So to me, it's listen and then just use our experience to apply the technology.
Yeah, I agree. A drawing, a map, is... I always like to have that because I'm trying to think about detection, coverage area, detection range, how many MSUs. Do we need an MSU? Maybe we just you have poles. We could mount a camera to the pole. Well, they don't have power. Well, we have our guard box. We can tap into the power even if it's on a photocell. Yeah. Or we can put a solar panel on. But you have a pole. The trailer is a pole, power, everything. But you already have, so there's a lot of things, so that's what my suggestion is. Come ready, to help us understand your environment. What do you have? What are the challenges you're dealing with? And then we'll help figure out the best solution. And it's good to know how much money you have to spend. But again, to my point earlier, in a lot of cases you don't know. You're trying to figure out how much you're looking. And that's where our website's great. We publish, you can go in there and see exactly what you need and how much it's going to cost. And if it's a bigger system or, we can work together and provide discounts and help save money. You don't need to monitor all. Okay, you have 32 cameras. Do you need them all monitored? Probably not. Maybe 2 or 3. Right? It depends on the application and your choke points and whatnot. So anything to add to that, Tanner, Scott?
Yeah, no, I think to your point, right, starting with an understanding of what's already there is step one, right? If you already have cameras, let's identify with maybe an architectural diagram or at minimum maybe a Google map sort of satellite image with the general placement of the camera. Understanding the camera model is really important, because when we look at the sort of those first two steps for Evolon, understanding what the camera that's already on site is capable of in terms of how many pixels are going to be there, right? What is the lens quality? Is the angle correct? So is it placed on the right part of the building? Like, that's another step that we want to look at to make sure that we have the right equipment in the right place. Now, the nice thing, if we're looking to start from scratch, is obviously we can design with monitoring in mind. So we're placing cameras. Maybe we're using 180-degree cameras that stitch into one, so we get broad coverage, but the price is not as high. So there's ways that we can design from the start, knowing what our billing looks like, knowing what our capabilities are, so that we can maximize coverage and minimize cost for the customer, which ultimately lets us engage more of their enterprise. And then I think the other thing is understanding activity. And so sometimes where before we ever get to, unless of course there's a critical need, right? We're getting hit every night. Then we can also drop the bridge on site, start pulling feeds, and let it run for a little bit and understand how that site acts, right? You find sometimes you're near enough a public street that sometimes people are just walking their dog, and they're walking through the parking lot every night because they don't want to walk all the way around, and it's a shortcut just to walk through, right? So we might identify, okay, these are not all bad actors, but we get a sense of what we're about to go into, so we can make adjustments in the design phase. So sometimes that's a great step. And then I think, you keep talking about the 5 Ds, right? There are physical components to this as well. So once we look at the site, you might have a choke point. So could we put a taller fence, right? If your activity level's that high, we might want physical deterrence, whether that is lighting. We might find in the initial assessment that you've got a section of the business that is right off a train track. There is a gap in the fence because the train track comes into your property for loading and unloading. And so you naturally have a hole that you'll never be able to fill. And today you don't even have a light there. So it looks like a nice dark entrance that I could walk right into. So having that as an assessment tells me there might be things we could solve there with environmental design that we don't need to interact with on the monitoring side if we can solve that, right? So I think those are the things, right? What do you have today? What's the technology, so we know what we're capable of doing with what's in place? We may not need to replace it. If we do, we can make that recommendation. And then what does the environment look like from activity, from a night perspective? Because again, if they have a need and they have good cameras, but the site is pitch black at night, right? If I can't see it, the camera can't see it, right? So in that case, those are all the levels of assessment I might go through with a customer.
I am really excited about we had Access in here for, I think it was episode 4, or maybe it was 5. But we talked a lot about radar and thermal. And they have the 270-degree radar and the 180. They're coming out with the 360 radar that we can put the Q62. So it's gonna hurt, a little bit on monitoring licenses, but that's what's cool about this conversation is we're not looking. That's where we work with the right partners. Work with people that know what they're doing, that have experience, that have certifications. Like you talked about, like environmental, so CPTED, crime prevention through environmental design, like choke points and foliage and lighting. Those that can act as deterrents. They can also act as a help to the camera to see. But what's cool about the radar is it'd be really one sensor to monitor for pro monitoring, because it's going to be the detection device, which then goes to the central station, and then they can look at the camera and move it around and see what's up, right? The camera's actually the radar will slew to cue the camera to the incident. So there's the trailer we're going to do with the radar. We're pretty excited about it. It might be a year. We're waiting for that to come out, but there are ways where we can provide amazing coverage, massive area with one device,
right,
and one camera, and only one sensor being monitored, but engage with us. That's where together, asking these questions and working as a team, we can figure it out.
Well, yeah, and I like that. I like the point that you hit there is that, if you go in with a mindset, I sell electronics, you're going to miss the big picture of what other things need to take place. Do you need more physical barriers? Do you need more lighting? What do you need? And you brought up budgets. I have not gotten anybody to tell me their budget, because the minute you ask, they think, well, if I tell you, that's going to be that's your quote.
Yeah.
So I've never asked anybody what their budget is. And this is why I approach it. I don't call myself a dealer. I don't call myself an integrator. I call myself a security consultant. So that's the way I look at it. When I go in, I pull as much information from the customer that I can so that I can understand the environment and the challenges, and then I ask myself this: if this was my facility and my money, what would I do?
Yeah.
That's what I do.
That's a great way to approach it.
This is what I would do, and based off the knowledge and the technology that I have access to, this is what I would do. So a lot of times we'll go with people and they'll go, I need 10 cameras, what's that going to cost? I'm like, I don't know. I don't think that way.
Because you might not need 10.
Let me go work it out, and I'll tell you what it's going to cost. I'm not trying to back into a budget.
Yeah.
Just from what I know, this is what it's going to cost, and this is the tech stack that I would use to achieve that. So it's a little bit different, but that's exactly it. You have to have the big picture, because the cameras and the monitoring may not be the only, ingredient to the secret sauce. You might need to bring people in and make other suggestions.
You're right. And from a consumer level, there's a reason why enterprise level manufacturers on the hardware side have a portfolio of hundreds of different cameras, form factors, lenses, resolution, ASICs, like the application specific integrated chip. Like, they have so many different things, and the reason why is because you rely on hopefully a good consultant, good integrator that can look at that site, can go walk it or look at the drawing, look at the Google Earth shot, and engineer all-encompassing system that's going to do what needs to be done for that project without overkill. As compared to go into like your local Costco, and that's the answer that some people tend to look for up front. And it's not any fault, they just don't know. They think a camera is a camera is a camera. And you can go into Costco, and on the shelf I saw a 16 camera system for $2,500 or whatever, right? Like, that's so how much would that be installed? That's where sometimes you get that. And that's tough, because that's not how we approach it as industry professionals. You might only need 4 cameras if we design it and engineer it correctly. And what are we trying to solve? Because are you really going to watch those? I have a lot of cameras on my house because I'm in the industry and I love to test them and play with them. But there's nothing there's probably things I hate more, but I don't like to review video. If something happened, if my kids got in a fight and my wife's like, hey, something happened, I don't like to go look at video and waste my time trying to figure out what happened, when it happened, what camera views it on. Now, I've had instances where I've had to do that personally, right? And I've, like, in the military, I've had to go look at things in video. Like, it's a big, huge time suck. And that's why Evolon removes all of that and only feeds you up what you're looking for. And time is money. Human capital is your number one biggest cost. And Evolon can make that a lot less expensive when you compare it to human capital, I think.
Well, Evolon's ahead of the market, and they listen, and they move quickly. I've been completely impressed. I am certain we've got the right partner here, and we will be ahead of the market, and that's our goal. Our goal is always to be ahead of the market. If you're in the market, then you better have low price. But if you're ahead of the market and you can solve a problem for less money than what others are coming in at, you're going to do very well. And we're counting on you guys to keep us ahead of the market, because we're feeding in, telling you guys what we need, and you guys are delivering. That's fresh.
What is on the roadmap, Tanner, that you could share? Roadmap's the funnest thing for me. Like, I want to know what's coming out. I know you can't always talk about it, but what can you share?
I think I can share general where we headed, right? I think if you it's August 2026. I think that when you look at the work that we're doing with Backstreet, there's a lot of movement how much of the overall performance can you push to the edge, right? And so there's going to be a lot of different features and components and upgrades that come as a result of that. But I think as an overall goal, the goal being if we can do a majority, if not all, at the edge, right? Can we get faster? Can we get better? Can we get more leaner on battery and cell usage? You'll see a lot of work in that sort of pillar. Then I think user experience is another core grouping. So you look at the alarm dashboard. That was the most recent upgrade to the user experience itself. I know that I can tell you we're working on a new version of the mobile application, which will have a much better user experience, both from a visual as well as just being able to get where you need to go faster, right? So less clicks to the result. And so the user experience is something that even at the top, right, with our CEO, Tom, the product development team, partners like Backstreet and our customers, right, everyone wants a seamless experience. And so taking that area, that'll always be a core focus. So short term, look out for a better mobile app experience. And then long term, give us your feedback, right? Let us know what else from the user experience you need.
We're not bashful. We've got a pretty good dev list that I'm excited about. That I know some things are coming.
Yeah. And then I think the third. So you have the push to the edge, right? You have user experience. And then the third area that we are, if I look at the roadmap, I could categorize it as like devices, right? So whether that's expanding the audio components, working with things like I/O modules on electrified fences, or working with other pieces of technology that help enable the if this happens, then do that. I think you'll see a lot of expansion into that category, because at the end of the day, if when you pop the hood, the tech stack to be proactive is pretty rock solid. We'll continue to improve the performance of the analytics and the AI, but that's pretty well and done from a performance standpoint. So a lot of it then becomes, how do we make this the best product you can use, right? And how do we tie into everything that you already have on site, or that a partner like Backstreet wants to implement, so that we can really, sky's the limit. Pull out a whiteboard, grab an expo marker, and figure out, back to the conversation we were just having, if this is your goal, what can we do to build it, right?
Yeah, no, and it really is a balance between simplicity and capability. There's like this, I feel like it's a tightrope. Like, we want it simple, reliable, has to work, but we want it to be fully capable. And there's a VMS, and then there's this, and we're really pushing hard to kind of have those merge for the lightweight on the MSU on a mobile platform, right? So that we don't have to have a VMS and an Evolon, two systems, because we need to keep it really light, simple, but highly capable. So I love it. We're pushing the limits. We're pushing the bounds of what we probably should be doing. But that's how we solve problems. And Evolon's been an amazing partner. I know we've said that several times, but they are about understanding.
They're worth it. They've earned it.
Yeah. So I have to wrap up. I have some fast hit questions. So these should just move pretty quick.
Okay.
Best vertical for Evolon right now?
Logistics.
Okay. Most misunderstood part about your platform?
I think the fact that it's all integrated together, right? When you see all three components, but it's misunderstood how deeply integrated that is. And when you play with the platform, you see the 5-second or less time from the mobile unit in California into the hands of an operator in San Antonio, Texas. And I think that piece is really cool if you're a bit of a security geek, but misunderstood, because you can see the components and miss the whole piece.
It's super impressive, and it's less than 5. It was like 3.2, 2.5 seconds.
It's fast.
Like, it's mind blowing, and you're on a cellular connection, and it's windy, and trees are blowing around, and it's dark, and it's detecting a person that's 500 feet away that's crawling. And it's not a thermal camera. We could do a thermal or radar and have accurate. So that's impressive. Sorry, we're gonna get such. All right, biggest reason projects fail.
I think expectations, right? You said that before. So We've gone into projects before where there was a misunderstanding of what capabilities are, right? And so just understanding from day one, what are you trying to accomplish? What can we do? And then delivering on that in a good experience. I'd say that's the number one reason. We've gotten much better at setting that expectation from day one along the way. And then, partners like Backstreet do a great job of setting the stage in the design phase. So, but I would say that, right? Monitoring is new to a lot of end users. So if there's not a very crisp expectation of what it can and what it can't do, we don't want to sell the world. We want to sell reality. And so that's probably the number one.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 more. One thing every integrator should do better on site design. So I kind of made it specific there.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about this too, what kind of our thoughts on it, but.
So I'll answer it from a monitoring perspective. I think we should design the system with monitoring in mind. Meaning, I'll give you an example. We came to a project once that had 24 cameras designed on this tilt wall, right? And so you've got 24 cable drops, you've got cable you got to pull, really expensive. And so when we sat down, we were looking at something like that Axis 180 that stitches into a single stream, got it down to 7, right? So 24 to 7, much different in terms of the CapEx spend for the customer, much less labor for the integrator, but also a better outcome for monitoring versus trying to pull data from 24 different streams. So that's one. But then the flip side would be, I would also, when you're picking a device, right, I would think about its multi-use, because I don't also want to put a camera on the building just for monitoring. And I mentioned earlier what we don't do, but there are platforms that specialize in things that we don't, right? So maybe you look at a coffee shop. It's got a drive-through. Well, if I'm not doing queue analytics, but someone else might. So can we place the right device, like an Axis camera that can run multiple third parties, but place it in the right location where at night it's highly effective at video monitoring, and during the day you run another analytic that's highly effective at queue lines and and operations,
vehicle counting.
Exactly, right? And so I would also think multi-use. But at the same time, I need a good view, because there are times we come into design and it's doing a great job at queue counting, but I can't see anything but like the 4 feet in the drive-through before the window, right? So those would be my 2.
I love it. Yeah, it's very. So don't think in silos. Think big picture. How can you do more with less? Really? Okay, cool. Last one. One thing every customer should stop doing. This is for our end users out there. Some advice on what they should stop doing. And Scott, feel free to answer that one too.
The minute you said that, I thought, well, that's a hard one.
It kind of is, because I said only one thing. I mean, I could talk a lot, so there's a lot I can think of, but I'll think of one too. So everybody take a stab at picking one.
I mean, for the purpose of the discussion, I think the one thing an end user could stop doing is accepting reactive solutions, right? If I rewind back to when I got into the industry, we sold a wonderful solution, crisp, 15, 30, 60 frames per second, beautiful 4K image. Maybe I threw a brief cam or something like that on it, and I could go back in time and I could make forensics analysis wonderful. I think when you look at the end user and they're trying to figure out, how do I take what I have and how do I make it more productive for the organization? How do I secure assets? How do I justify the expenditure that I make within the org and go from a cost center to a value add? Then I would say stop accepting reactive when the tools you already have might be more than capable of being a real-time proactive asset for the organization.
Yeah. No, I love that's a good one. Did you want to pass, Scott?
I have a couple of jokes, but I don't.
I mean, mine's pretty similar to yours. How we talked about this even before we went live today. Bids, bids that have a spec. A lot of these end users are in a lot of cases they hire somebody to help them put a spec together. In a lot of other cases, they got a demo from somebody. They might have got a free lunch or two, or went to dinner, or went to a trade show, and saw the demo. That's the whole purpose behind our podcast, Beyond the Demo, right? And so they then said, hey, I want to get this, and then they go to buy it, and then purchasing says, you can't do that. You have to get bids. You got to go get 3 or 4 bids. So then they put it out on the proverbial bid street with the spec that company, that vendor gave them. Like, here's our spec. Strip out our logo brand and put it out. Please stop doing that, end users, because what you're doing is you're locking yourself into that into that one product when there's probably a much better solution that's out there. So put out a notice of sole source. Like, hey, look, we're thinking about buying this product. Be transparent about it. Like, this is what we were going to do, and we want you to come to us and tell us why that's not a good idea. That happens all the time. I've been doing this for a lot of years, and I've seen these, and I've gone to purchasing, and I've said, instead of a bid, what you should need to do is a notice to sole source, and just be transparent. We want to buy this, because I can tell. I can see where you redacted the brand, but I know when I read it exactly whose MSU it is or whose camera it is. And so do that. Like, be transparent, and then, because then I can tell you these are the 5, 15, 20, 50, whatever reasons why this solution would be better, and that's encompassing the monitoring and the analytics and everything else.
That comes back to one of the things that I was one of my jokes that I was thinking of. But that's the case, because how many times do we get a bid spec in and then it's just laid out exactly, and it's like, this was written for a specific product.
Yeah.
Now, if you took our product that was similar to that, they wouldn't be able to meet ours.
Yeah.
So they're going, it's like, well, go, if that's what you want, go buy that.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't waste our time.
Then there's the other side where a customer will take one snippet of a spec from there and one from here and one from there and one from here. And it's like, well, that doesn't exist. Sometimes you can't marry two technologies together, but they like the features and the benefits of each. But that's where we come in. So it's not really something the customer, I wish they wouldn't do. It's just something I wish they would understand, that sometimes you can't have, a race car that pulls a boat. Maybe it doesn't work like that.
It's not really. And there's a lot that we could help them be educated on if they were open-minded instead of siloed into that. Well, this is the spec, and usually at that point we're dealing with purchasing, and they don't have.
There's not even a conversation. Yeah. It's just like, this is what we're buying. Yep. It's like, well, yeah, that is what you're going to buy because that's their spec, and no one else builds them that way. Yeah. So you should go buy that.
Well, that's why it's our mission and goal to train and educate. That's why we do this. That's why we invest the time and the money to do this and the experience. That. How do you replace experience? Like, that's, how do you put value on experience, right? It's invaluable. It's been great, Tanner. I love these types of conversations because it's where real world deployability of these types of solutions meet the product capability, right? That's what we want to get to the bottom of. Like, what actually do you do, and how do you do it? And how do we actually implement it and deploy it in the real world so we can be successful, so our customers can be successful. So before we go, as we wrap up, what's one thing, just one, that you want everybody to remember about Evolon?
I think the one thing to remember about Evolon is that the fact that we work with every security system means that there's a very low barrier to using what you have to get a much different outcome. And so regardless of where you're at and the equipment that you have in place, if you're listening and you've got security challenges that you're trying to solve, the one thing to take away is that there's a high likelihood that we could immediately take over where you're at today, and with a partner like Backstreet, make it incredibly proactive and solve the problem you're trying to solve.
Yeah. No, I agree. If you're trying to stop false alarms and actually get a response on real alarms, this is where you start, right? This technology and our team, we can. That's what we bring. So, in closing, what's the best way for people to learn more about Evolon and Insights?
I mean, start by reaching out to Backstreet, right? Fantastic partner of Evolon. They've got a team that fully understands the platform, the product, the use case, the design. So reach out to them, and they can throw everything from a solution to a quote in your hands. Otherwise, you can find us on evolontech.com. You can reach out to our team. We have technical support. We have sales. All of our contact information is on there. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Evolon Tech. On LinkedIn. And really appreciate the time. You guys have a fantastic business. I would agree with Scott, right? Ahead of the market. So everything that we can do to help, push Backstreet to stay ahead of the market is really good for business, right? Because the end users are going to have a great solution and everyone's going to be happy. So I appreciate the opportunity and the time, and I'm super excited to see, where the podcast goes and where the business with Backstreet grows.
Love it, man. Thanks, Tanner. Scott, any last thoughts from you?
No, I agree. I really appreciate you coming here. Good insight, really good insight. And this is a true partnership. This isn't, supplier vendor. This is partnership. It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
And our customers are going to benefit because of that.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess to close, again, appreciate you guys for joining and the time invested. I think this was a great one. It's probably pretty long, but for good reason. There's a lot to talk about. For our audience, I want to say thanks for tuning in. If you haven't already, subscribe. And feel free to share this episode this is a great episode, I think, for anybody that's serious about remote guarding. Guard services, it's very expensive, and the reliability is hit or miss. Mobile surveillance, mobile detection, deterrence, and video monitoring. So feel free to share it with anybody that's interested in learning more. I think they'll learn a lot from this. Keep an eye on what we're building and the continual advancements and innovations that Backstreet Surveillance is doing with Evolon together. So keep an eye, because there will be a lot more to come, and it'll come pretty quick. So with that, until next time, stay safe, everybody. Thank you.